She wiped down the same counter 3 times a shift. Nobody noticed. That was the point. To the staff at Ridgeview Memorial, she was Nurse Mara Doyle. Quiet, forgettable, always early, never late. She kept her eyes down. She kept her voice low. Nobody knew that 6 years ago she had a different name. A different rank. A different kind of silence. The kind that gets people killed if you break it at the wrong moment. Nobody knew, until the night a stretcher came through the doors with a man on it, half-conscious, blood soaked through his shirt, muttering a call sign only 3 people alive were supposed to recognize. Her hands went still on the counter. That word was about to change everything. Hey, before we go further, welcome to Silent Heroes. If you're watching this tonight, drop where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And here's one for you. Guess what Mara used to do before she ever picked up a stethoscope? Type your guess below. Now back to the story. Ridgeview Memorial sat on the edge of a mid-sized city, the kind of hospital that saw car wrecks and heart attacks, not gunshot wounds with tactical dressings already applied in the field. Mara had chosen it for exactly that reason. Boring. Overlooked. Safe. She was 34, with pale gray eyes that missed nothing and a jaw she kept tight, like she was always waiting for a door to slam. Her hands were steady in a way that unsettled people who paid attention, which was almost nobody. A thin white scar ran along her left forearm, the kind you get from a blade, not a fall. She always wore long sleeves. For 6 years, she had built a life out of subtraction. No photograph. No old friends. A name that wasn't hers, worn until it felt like skin. She had learned the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Small enough that no one asked questions. Small enough that no one remembered her face after their shift ended. The man who ran her floor was Dr. Aldous Reyes, head of emergency medicine, 48 years old, and allergic to being wrong in front of witnesses. He had a habit, every staff meeting, every rough call, of finding one nurse to make an example of. Usually Mara. Doyle, is it? He'd say, loud enough for the nurse's station to hear. Try not to think. Just follow the chart. He said it like a joke. It never was. Reyes wasn't cruel because he was strong. He was cruel because he was scared. Scared of being exposed as average in a building full of people smarter than him, and terrified someone might notice before he made chief of staff. There was one person who noticed something else in her. Old Mr. Halloway, in and out of the cardiac ward for 2 years, 81 years old, sharp as a blade despite the tubes in his arm. You stand like someone who's been shot at, he told her once, matter of fact, like he was commenting on the weather. She didn't answer. He didn't push. But he remembered. The night the sirens came in wasn't like other night. It started as a mass casualty call, a highway pileup, they said. Then dispatch corrected themselves. Gunfire. Multiple wounded. One critical, unresponsive on arrival. The doors burst open at 11:47 p.m. Reyes took charge immediately, shouting orders that sounded confident and were almost entirely wrong. Chest tube, now. He's got a pneumo on the right. Mara looked at the monitor. Then at the man's neck. Then at the way his trachea had shifted, subtle, almost invisible unless you'd seen it before, in a tent, under fire, with nothing but a knife and a ballpoint pen. It wasn't a simple pneumothorax. It was tension pneumothorax, the deadly kind, air trapped in the chest cavity with nowhere to escape, crushing the heart and lungs with every breath he tried to take. Left untreated for even a few more minutes, the pressure would stop his heart completely. Reyes's chest tube would help, eventually. But eventually was too slow. This patient needed a needle decompression, immediately, into the second intercostal space, to relieve the pressure before his heart gave out. Mara's eyes locked onto the patient's forearm. A tattoo, faded, half covered in blood. 3 letters and a number. A unit designation. Then he spoke. Barely conscious, gasping, he said a name. Her name. The real one. The word hit the room like a detonation. Reyes spun toward her. What did he just say? Mara said nothing. Her jaw tightened. The tremor that always lived in her left hand, the one she'd trained herself to hide for 6 years, was gone. Just gone, like it had never existed. Doyle. I asked you a question. Still nothing. The silence stretched, sharp enough to cut. Get me a 14-gauge needle, she said instead. Her voice had changed. Steady. Flat. Certain. Now. A nurse hesitated, looking at Reyes for permission. She is not authorized to, Reyes started. He's got maybe 90 seconds, Mara said, already moving, already reaching. You want to explain to his family why you spent them arguing with me? For the first time in 6 years, she stopped making herself small. Her hands found the landmark without hesitation. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, just above the third rib to avoid the nerve and vessel bundle running beneath. 6 years hadn't erased it. Some things live in muscle, not memory. The needle went in. A hiss of trapped air escape, and almost instantly, the numbers on the monitor began to climb back toward the living. Sats coming up, someone called out. 91, 94. Reyes stood frozen, mouth open, a man who had just watched a nurse he humiliated for 2 years save a life his own instincts would have lost. The room had gone quiet in a different way now. Not tense. Stunned. Chest tube tray, for real this time, Mara said, calm, already moving to the next step. And somebody get me his vitals every 60 seconds. Nobody argued. Nobody looked at Reyes for permission anymore. By 6 o'clock in the morning, the patient, stable, sedated, breathing on his own, was in the ICU. And Reyes had already made his move. Doyle is suspended, effective immediately, he told the charge nurse, loud enough for half the floor to hear. Insubordination. Unauthorized procedures. I want her badge. No, Mara said. I am just done hiding. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. A small crowd had gathered by then, nurses, a resident, even Mr. Holloway's daughter, visiting early. They'd all seen what happened in that trauma bay. They knew whose hands had actually saved that man's life. Reyes tried to take her badge anyway. She let him. She didn't fight it. She just stood there, and the silence around her did the fighting for her. The kind of silence that comes from a room full of people who've stopped believing the person in charge. 2 hours later, a black government sedan pulled into the hospital's front circle. 2 people stepped out, a woman in uniform, gray at the temples, moving like someone used to being obeyed, and a man in a plain gray suit who didn't need a uniform to command a room. We're here for Sergeant First Class Naomi Voss, the woman said at the nurse's station. Also known, apparently, as Mara Doyle. Reyes went pale. They read her record aloud, right there in the hallway: years of combat medic service, a Silver Star, a rescue under fire that had saved 4 men from a position everyone else had already written off as lost. The wounded man in the ICU had been one of them. He'd spent 6 years trying to find her, to thank her, never knowing she was hiding in plain sight 2 states away. She saved my life once already, he'd whisper later when he woke up. Guess she wasn't done. Reyes tried to salvage what was left of his authority. This is completely irregular. She never disclosed. She didn't have to disclose anything to you, the officer said. She had to save a life. She did that better than you would have. He had one more thing to say, a last, desperate line, the kind people say when they know they've already lost. I was just trying to run my department the right way. Nobody answered him. Nobody needed to. It didn't take long after that for the rest to come apart. An internal review, prompted by the officer's report, turned up something Reyes hadn't counted on anyone looking for: falsified equipment logs, kickbacks from a supply vendor pushing outdated crash carts through the ER at inflated prices, safety inspections he'd signed off on without ever checking. His competence had always been a performance. Underneath it was a man protecting a paycheck, not patients. 2 nights later, the danger wasn't over. The vendor's man came looking for the missing paperwork Reyes had hidden in his own office, and found Mara there instead, pulling files for the review board. He didn't expect a nurse to fight back. He really didn't expect a combat medic to. It ended fast, and it ended with him zip-tied to a chair, waiting for the police, muttering that this wasn't supposed to happen this way. The real fight came after, in the ICU, when the rescued sergeant's heart rate began to drop without warning, a delayed complication, the kind combat medics are trained to expect and dread. Mara worked over him with the same steady hands, calling numbers out loud. Heart rate 62, 58, start compressions. You don't have to do this alone anymore, he rasped, barely conscious, somewhere between then and now. Not like the last time. Her throat tightened just once. Then her hands didn't shake at all. 52. 55. He's coming back. Got it, she said finally. He has a chance. Reyes lost his license within the month. The hospital board named the new trauma protocol after the sergeant he'd nearly killed with his own certainty. Mara was reinstated within the week, then offered something better, director of a new combat trauma training program, teaching civilian staff what 6 years in a war zone had taught her. Mr. Halloway was there the day they hung her new title on the door. Told you, he said, grinning. Knew you'd been shot at. She smiled, the first real one anyone on that floor had ever seen. You were the only one who asked. Nobody has to hide who they are to be good at what they do. Sometimes the quietest person in the room has already survived the loudest war. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the work anyway with steady hands when everyone else is too busy being wrong. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Silent Heroes so you never miss the next one, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Reyes ever admitted what he really was? The next story is already waiting. The end.